Hello everyone. Yesterday saw the worldwide release of the long-anticipated documentary movie titled The Age of Disclosure, directed by Dan Farah. The movie had received an actually serious and fairly substantial coverage in the mainstream media over the course of the last few days as a preparation for the grand release. I have just watched the movie and let me share my first hot off the press thoughts about it. First and foremost, a small disclaimer to international viewers, the movie is quite heavily US-centric. Next, it also pushes the national security angle of the USA rather strongly too. This may clash with the views of many people thinking that advanced non-human beings would be peaceful by nature. I myself hold a similar view, but I also cannot reject the idea that I may be wrong and people claiming that UFOs or UAPs are testing our military and energy capacity as part of a recon operation could actually be right. On to the actual thoughts. The movie is narrated by Lou Elizondo, a person many of us have grew to know from his appearances in the UFO circles and legacy media alike. The secondary narrator is John J. Stratton, the first director of the UAP task force established in 2020. The movie also includes fairly substantial segments involving Christopher Mellon, a figure from the higher echelons of the US government, as well as physicists Hal Puthoff and Eric Davis, quite heavily involved in the topic as the main scientific experts in the movie. The movie itself provides a recap of all the push for disclosure we have seen so far, starting from 2017 and the publication of the 3 declassified UAP videos in New York Times to the events of 2025 mentioned during the credits. It includes 3 UAP hearings from 2022, 2023 and 2024, including bits of witness statements. There are many politicians featured in the movie, most notably Marco Rubio, who I can see was at some point strongly moved by information he acquired on the topic of UAPs and the black budget programs running crash retrieval and reverse engineering programs. At one point, he is rather vividly seen being uneasy or shaken by the things that he got to know along the way. We got figures like General Clapper and Mike Brennan, directors of the intelligence agencies DIA and CIA respectively. We see senators and representatives from the Congress, all testifying to the reality of either the phenomenon or the secretive legacy program operating outside of oversight. We can see the effects of the pushback from the secret program and how whistleblowers were harassed and sometimes physically endangered over the years. One of the more surprising aspects I have learned was the mention of 2 attempts at disclosure. One allegedly took place in 2004 during President George W. Bush's administration, and another one towards the end of the first term of President Donald Trump. In the first case, a panel of experts advised against disclosure, and in the second case it may have been a similar story actually, as the economic impact of potential disclosure of non-human life and its presence was examined at that time as well. The movie confirms several UFO cases as being real and having actually happened. Those include the 1947 crash near Roswell, where 4 bodies were recovered together with a craft split in half on impact. The next one was the 2004 Nimitz incident with a Tic Tac UFO involved, and another one would be the 2008 Stephenville incident in Texas, which involved a gigantic object passing over the town, near the President Bush's residence there. There was a mention of a 1989 crash in southern USSR, most likely today's Kazakhstan, where several humanoid bodies were recovered, together with a craft allegedly twice the size of the one encountered by the Nimitz strike group in 2004. The movie saw a fairly long segment of UFOs interfering with atomic weapons, disabling ICBMs at several locations around the USA, involving craft of various shapes and sizes. This part saw the appearance of the legendary witness Captain Robert Salas, who was stationed at an ICBM base in Montana in late 1960s. There was also a mention of the 1982 incidents in back then Ukrainian Soviet Republic, where a UFO triggered the launch sequence for nuclear missiles over several minutes. The scientific angle of the phenomenon was also presented. From the claim from Dr. Davis that at least 2 different kinds of beings or species were recovered as bodies from the crashes, to the theories behind the energy source of UFOs, which could be either a zero-point energy technology or quantum entanglement with a remote energy source. Speaking of the craft, we saw the presentation of the famous 6 observables posited by the ATIP project involving both Elizondo and Stratton. The 6th observable, namely the impact of UFOs on biological systems, including human bodies, saw the appearance of Dr. Gary Nolan from the Stanford University, who studied military personnel who came in contact with anomalous objects. The physicists also presented the theory explaining many of the observed UFO capabilities and difficulties tracking them, including taking photographs. The movie proposes that a warp bubble of a kind may exist around the craft, with different space-time environment existing inside the bubble and outside the bubble. Inside the craft, the pilots would not experience the extreme accelerations we observed on the outside. And the same mechanism could also explain different time flow inside and outside the bubble, as well as the claims that the craft are much larger inside than outside, and the phenomenon of missing time reported by first-hand witnesses and experiencers alike. We could also see the political side of the push for disclosure, from whistleblowers making their way to the Congress and the UAP hearings, to the effort of the UAP Disclosure Act proposed by Senators Schumer and Round, and now also Senator Gillibrand, struck thrice by the Congress thus far. All in all, I will summarize it that way. If you are heavily invested in the topic and have a good grasp of what has transpired over the last 8 years or so in the UFO field, there is not going to be a lot of new information you will hear. But for someone unaware or with just a cursory knowledge of the UAP issue, this is an excellent starting point to discover what we as a species may be in contact with. Last but not least, the last 48 hours brought some claims, the source of which I am unaware of, that the movie may be a strong contender for an Oscar for the best documentary movie of the year. I think that even a nomination would be a tremendous success given how the topic is still perceived, but if it somehow managed to win an Oscar, it would add a ton of extra credibility to the UAP issue and how it is treated everywhere. Not to even mention the eye-opening factor for many people. As you can probably guess, I am quite excited after watching the movie. It is available now, albeit quite pricey, as it is not included in the Video Prime subscription, but you also do not need one to watch it. It can be bought or rented off Amazon. I will leave the decision whether to spend money on it or not to you. What are your thoughts, dear viewers? Have you watched the movie, and do you think it is going to move the needle in a positive direction for the disclosure effort? Let me know in the comment section down below. That's it for today. Thank you for watching. Like and subscribe if you enjoyed the content, and I will see you soon in another video. Take care.